Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, darling, kiss me. Oh, well, that's it.
Great. Surugaram?
Sure.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the brand new podcast series. And this is Sarosh, and you are listening to KTM POP CHAT. We have a very special guest today, a person with a very keen view on urban landscape, sustainable and urban development, holistic living, he says. He is an architect, engineer. Let's welcome him on the show. Sarosh, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Namaste. Thank you for inviting me.
Great. After a while having conversation about having this podcast. So today we're kind of quite open and flexible to talk about your experience, what you're doing at the moment. But I would want to start with a very simple question. You as an artist, architect, how you would want to introduce yourself and your vision in current journey of your life?
I think if I were to kind of condense it in a few words, I would say that after I started working here in Nepal, and initially you do work in an urban environment where you want to be connected to everyone and everything, and also there is a certain disconnection that happens when you go up in the mountains. So in this current stage, I just spent 2 months up in the Everest area. And I was with an Everest climbing team. I didn't personally climb Everest, but I was there with all the acclimatization that they did, and also climbed Island Peak, which is 6,196. And, the struggle of being in a difficult environment, has changed me in many ways. And I think... we talk about the urban scenario where, there's so much that's happening. And, when you go up on a trek, when you disconnect with everything that you learn something more profoundly. So, I'm not a monk, but in a way, I like the silence that exists, in places in Nepal, which makes you think clearly. And a lot of people come to Nepal to seek that clarity in their life or a connection of nature. So my vision is to really look at life in a more holistic way than just a professional way or just, with one lens.
Yeah, great. I would come back and talk about your journey and the work that you're doing in the mountain region. But I think to start with your kind of past experience and your work in urban setting, where you also kind of very much focus on holistic living, sustainable cities and the communities. Could you kind of explain what does that mean to people and how they kind of grasp that?
I think it needs to start, when you say holistic, it needs to start a lot with yourself. If you're a very chaotic person, the eyes that you look at the world will also, in a certain sense, be chaotic. But if you have that certain clarity about what holistic means in terms of your physical health, your emotional health, and also, the family that you live in, not just your personal family, but, in terms of your association with your country, landscape, nature, culture, you suddenly get a wider kind of understanding. And everything is not about change. There is a certain balance when you allow things to happen in a certain way. But architecture or, culture in a certain sense is also an understanding that you try to maybe enforce. And like when I go to different parts of Nepal, I sense that economics plays a certain part, but the connection of the past and present and future, how do you handle this scenario in a way that you understand, dictates the kind of stuff that you do or the architecture that you produce.
Yeah, interesting. Let's look at Kathmandu itself. It looks very chaotic, very busy, random, a lot of stuff happening, different layers of thinking in it. And over the time, the way it's kind of developing, while you're talking about sustainable urban development, how do you see where we are lacking in terms of Kathmandu developing and has developed for the last 15, 20 years? What would be a new angle and approach to kind of rethink in terms of Kathmandu revisualizing from an angle of an architect?
I think, it's not just a new angle, but it's to kind of see how did life begin in this place. And I think all settlements begin with the river, as a place where it brings fertility around that place. But, what we see around is that the river is kind of a forgotten entity. And, you have all the construction that is happening all around with a certain economic agenda. But, what we're seeing now presently at the moment of an awareness for the river, allowing it to flow through the city and to have a certain respect for these natural entities that are there. And, when you look at an aerial view of Kathmandu Valley, you still see a lot of greenery. It's not just the houses. And if you can kind of visualize this in a strong manner and allow it to kind of breathe across all the chaos that is happening, over time, I think this, this fact, openness that you do have at the moment will play a very instrumental part. And I remember going to Japan, and there was this hill, and there was a small little information center which centered around a place of old photographs of this little hill which kind of looked very barren. But what they did was they just diverted, a water source, and they made a few areas which they could green it out. Mm-hmm. And over the years, like in Mustang, which was very barren, now it's become a trail near Osaka for people to go and hike.
Right.
And I was amazed at a vision of a simple thing which existed perhaps in the past, but which became more barren and dry, with proper intervention can be brought back to life.
Very nice. While you're talking about the conservation of river that we already have, all the natural resources, as you said, like when you look at Kathmandu from aerial view, there's a lot of green space. That means there's high potential and chances. But here in Kathmandu, I think this is what we kind of lack in a way, the vision of looking at city as a city, clean city. My second question would be to you, looking at Kathmandu as a capital, what is the nature of capital city and metropolitan city that kind of not harm the green space and living space and less activities, but at the same time keeping that together? So how do you see the balance?
I think, the boundaries that we draw, in terms of like what we understand as a private space with an external, a public space. As countries or capitals or places evolve, there is a time when there is insecurity and when you want to keep your resources with yourself. But as you evolve, you also learn to blur the boundaries. For example, in a place like Nepal, in a place where the economy is, not at its best, you want to build boundary walls across, your premises because there's certain insecurity. But you go to certain developed places, there are no boundaries. You share a boundary with a little hedge. And, if you look at our cultural past, we learn to share a lot. But, with all the problems that we've had now, we've created these boundaries around us. And it's an expensive boundary. So how do we create an understanding with people is that when you share resources, it becomes economically more viable than when you think only of yourself, right? So, but this is not something that you can only design. It has to be felt, and you have to learn to kind of feel secure with your neighbor. And I think when the earthquake happened in Nepal, there was a time when a lot of people were helping each other, when these boundaries were kind of blurred, when you went out of, whatever you were doing, and you went out to literally help another person who was in trouble. So I feel that these are strong visions and understanding that we need to foster.
So you basically trying to say we should be focusing more on public spaces, public property.
Absolutely. I think like,
transportation, maybe.
Yeah. From transportation to, public space where you interact with, it gives you a certain security and an understanding of, a larger context. You may have a beautiful house, but if your neighborhood is all crime ridden, what's the beautiful house with all the security that, you try to create artificially? Yeah. So the way that I would see civilizations kind of, foster and grow well is when you blur the lines of, your boundary, and you try to reach out and understand, the larger menu of ingredients that make a place interesting.
Well, yes, thank you. We were also talking about changing scenario of Kathmandu, and you see full of chaos at the moment and visual pollution. So from the artistic and architectural perspective, what do you think the reason behind this, and why is that? What is there in the city that we see making the city ugly?
This is a tough one, but I think, it again comes out to, freedom, democracy, to have your voice comes with a certain price.
Yeah.
And, if everyone is screaming for freedom from their point of understanding, there will be chaos. This is why there is a certain discipline that is required to understand a certain responsibility that comes with, all these big words, right? And I feel that, unless you understand, this discipline or consistency, you will always have this kind of people going around in different tangents. But to bring them to the same plate is a tough job. And I feel that artists and creative people can give this spark to bring that cohesion, to bring that interesting factor together, to kind of, like when Van Gogh painted his paintings, Starry Night. It's just not about, he for once he went and stayed with these coal miners who were working in the coal mines. During the day, they used to go deep into the coal trenches.
Right.
And they used to come out in the evening and, then they would not see the day.
Yeah.
So when they had a holiday, for example, a Saturday or a Sunday, and they went out and looked at the sky or the tree, they looked as if the sky was coming out from the sky.
Yeah.
The tree was coming out. So he created these paintings very much from the angle these coal miners saw, these visions.
Yeah.
Very bright, very crisp. And I feel that connection an artist can have intrinsically with society, with people, goes a layer deeper than, a normal person just seeing the coal miners, they're having a rough time. But when you go and spend time with people, you see the beauty of how they look at the world. And that is the beauty of these artists. They bring out things that are taken for granted, but they give you such a twist that, you want to pay $1 million for a piece of art. Yeah.
Very interesting interpretation and connection. I loved it. Thank you. So maybe the last question, how do you see the progress at the moment taken by the current status, the state, the government, local government? What is your sort of observation and reaction on this?
I think people are learning to look, question, and also take these steps.
Mm-hmm.
Some are not baby steps, some are very broad steps. And I feel that, society or the government or people are getting more courageous.
Mm-hmm.
There's a time when you looked at the ruling party or the king to solve all your problems. And then now you feel that maybe the government or the people who are representing you can solve the problem. So I feel that we're coming out of the shell and we're trying to face the problems.
Yeah.
And in the process of kind of exchanging actions or words or debating it, I'm sure I for once, I feel I always look at life in a positive manner. And no matter what happens in life, it is from a certain context of the suffering or, the joy people have had.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that sooner or later, the deeper values will emerge. And I feel also that, when you are young, you have an agenda or you want to do things very fast. When you mature with time, you become timeless in looking at, that you have to depart one day.
Yeah.
So why not have a deeper value than just short-term, kind of
It's
fancies.
kind of a message to young
Yeah.
people who are very active and energetic, try and do so many things.
Yes.
Yeah, so, yes, I think it's also a lot about our schooling, our society where we are surrounded, what we are surrounded with, and what people, think about certain things.
Yes, but I have one kind of observation is that, we churn out a lot of professionals. For example, there are 11 schools of architecture. There's
Right.
so many medical schools, but are people really getting more educated and healthy?
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
I think a lot of it deals with a certain business that
Yeah.
you promote, but a lot of it also needs to come that once you have the basics in place, it's also the awareness of the person
Yeah.
where he takes his understanding to another level,
Right.
right? So sometimes you become professional, but you really are not looking beyond your profession as to interact with the larger things that are happening around. And I feel that overlap that you do beyond your professionalism is more important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is always debatable. There's so many people who are not necessarily coming from academic background, but
Yes.
they're always doing amazing jobs.
Yeah, some of the best architects have never gone into architecture school.
Exactly.
But they've got into construction, they've, worked with builders, and they've seen the grounded, realistic problems.
Right.
And, when you start really working with your hands and your mind and seeing things, you get better results than just looking at it from an academic point of view or writing a long paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think whatever you're saying, like making bigger sense, better sense in the context of how Kathmandu or overall Nepal is developing and changing the overall landscape. If you look at the past 5 years, 10 years, you see the changes. And I think this is a big lesson to a lot of young architects, young designers. So thank you so much for sharing your ideas, knowledge. I think this will definitely help a lot of people who listen to this podcast and have better understanding. Is there anything that I maybe missed to ask you and you want to share?
One thing that I would like to share is beyond being an architect. Every day I think of being lesser of an architect, and especially I think if you really look at what architecture or the building industry is all about, is creating a space that is comfortable, but in a deeper sense. When you take any resource out of the earth, you're wounding the earth in a certain way, right? So how do you bring out that balance is that, you create a problem and you say this is the solution. But my question is that before you even create a problem, if you can look at nature and look at, what we have, you will understand and you will know what not to do.
Right.
And I would like to leave on the note that just because you're an architect, it doesn't mean you have to build buildings. You have to build a better country. You have to build a better landscape. You have to learn to respect, the richness that we have. And I think that is so valuable for you to understand as a human being, not as, only a professional.
Right.
Yes?
Yeah, makes sense. Totally. Thank you so much, Sarosh, for your time once again. And yes, I would like to wish you all the best with all the project that you're doing. Thank you. So thank you. I think with this note, we have come to the end of the program. This podcast series is supported by the US Embassy, Kathmandu, Nepal. Thank you so much, the US Embassy, for supporting this kind of unique initiative by Bikalpa Art Center. Okay, so thank you so much. But before I say goodbye, I would like to request you to kindly subscribe our channel. We are based on different podcast platforms. So please do go check it out and see what you like, what you feel comfortable listening us or watching us. You could definitely choose the best platform you like. Thank you so much for listening us. See you next time. Bye-bye.